What is up, everyone? Welcome back. I hope you guys are having a great day. In this video, I just kind of want to tell you all my experience with using Tailwind CSS. I just started using it on a personal site that I'm working on. I'm trying to make a course related to test-driven development or just testing in general for web developers. And I decided to try using Next.js for this site and also Tailwind CSS to actually style the stuff. So keep in mind, I'm not good with web design. I'm more of like a programmer. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of these designs, I'm actually just kind of copying from what I see online, and a lot of this stuff could use some improvement. But so if you are interested in learning about testing, be sure to stay tuned if I ever finish this course, because I haven't even really started on it. But I have the site hooked up with PayPal, and you can actually like preview the course here. And the backend is actually connecting to S3, and it's loading the files down. And we can kind of go through the course catalog and stuff and watch the videos. So this is just something to kind of practice using some new technologies with, and the one I mentioned I'm using as well is Tailwind CSS. So I kind of just want to give you an overview of what I think about it. From the get-go, I mean, you can be pretty productive pretty quick, right? It's really easy to just quickly create sections or create elements and then pad them or add margin. And I'm not really that new to Atomic CSS. Like I've used Bootstrap where you have these like little helper functions, like PT4 is not new to me. There's a lot of helper functions in Bootstrap that kind of do this for you. But I think Tailwind CSS provides you with a larger toolkit of these different classes you can apply to your images and your divs and whatnot. So some of these class names can get pretty long. Like for example, this one, it's a simple button which has all of this stuff. And I think what you could end up doing in Tailwinds is you could kind of copy all this out and abstract it into a style somewhere. So I could probably copy this out and just put like, I don't know, const button up here and set it equal to that. Or you could probably bring in the class names package. Let's see if I can find where that button was. So let's do, I could probably do something like that. And then wherever it says buy course for $19.99, I think that's in the main page. We had that style and we could simply just apply that Tailwind CSS style to whatever else if you're using React like I am right now. You'll notice that the button turns green, and you could probably change this up a little bit and just append it with, I don't know, I could do like BG blue 100, and that should change the color of the button. So it's pretty cool in that aspect. One thing I'm not really a fan of is just all of these long class names. Nothing I'm building is that extravagant, so I could assume that as your styles get more complex, like you're gonna have class names going off your screen. I don't know how many more characters I could. My monitor's not that big, so I couldn't really handle that many characters going off the screen. And the more classes you have, the harder it is to find the exact like class that you're looking for to either change or remove. Like, so to give you one example, I had like when I was trying to debug an issue where like the text wasn't changing from white. And as an example, like I had text white placed twice. And you can see how hard it is to see that I have duplicate class names applied to the same thing. So I went over here and I'm like, okay, I see this one. Let's just go ahead and remove it. And then I went back to the UI and it's like the button is still having text white. So what's going on? And obviously it didn't take me too long to figure out that I have it applied again, but just stuff like that, which I think would be easier to debug when it's just pulled out into a style sheet somewhere above or in a separate file. And you have all those line by line. That's just the way my eyes work. It's easier for me to see issues and bugs if they're all in separate lines versus having a ton of crap on the same line. I don't like it, but some great things about it. I mean, like you have all of these built-in styles for doing responsive layouts. I haven't even like touched the surface of all the different responsive layouts you can do. Like I believe you could do like MD in front of stuff or large in front of stuff if you want it to change based on the screen resolution. I thought it was pretty good. Like I'm also doing a lot of flex for the layout here. And Tailwind CSS provides you with a bunch of like different widths. So if I wanted like 3/5 of the page to be this stuff and the other 2/5 to be another stuff, another layout, I guess I should say, all you need to do is just add this W-2/5 and it works. And it's pretty cool. You can also like add negative top to it. So I can bring elements up if I want to, or make them positioned relative. And that saves you on a lot of time of having to go to your style, go to your class, and then type position : relative. And you might say, okay, well, that's not really that hard to do. Like typing position relative in a CSS file is not that hard to do, right? And it really isn't. But if you imagine all of these things which have shorthands as you continuously type them, like it adds up. Over time, you're typing out more code, which takes you a longer time. You have a higher chance of mistyping something, having bugs. But these are all just like small nitpicky things. Overall, I mean, I think it's pretty cool. So if you're a beginner, I highly recommend looking into it. If you don't want to learn everything about CSS, well, I should take that back. If you kind of need to know CSS to use Tailwind, like for example, this class P4, this stands for padding. If you don't know what padding is in CSS, you're not going to know what P4 even does. And the 4 is just an amount, right? So as you go up in values, like P8, that means pad it. I don't know if it's 8 pixels or 8 rims or EMs, but I think it's just a certain amount, and they go up in a certain order. And one thing I haven't figured out is once you get past a certain size, you have to start skipping numbers. So it's like you go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and then it goes like to 8, and then like 12, and then 16, 32, 34. You have to look at the chart and actually figure that out. I haven't invested time to see what the pattern is, but I would have liked it to just have padding 1 through 100, and I could type whatever I wanted, or just have everything divisible by 2 or 4. But there's like some strange numbers that they don't really follow a pattern from what I've seen. But you can correct me. Let me just go to the docs real quick and try to find that. Let me go documentation. The docs are really great. I will give it that. If you wanted to find anything, you simply just type in like padding, boom, you're there. And that's great. But if you see the numbers, they go from like 1 to 12 incrementing by 1, and then they start incrementing by 2 up to 20, and then they increment by 4 up to 40, up to 80, and then it jumps from 80 to 96. So that I don't understand. I don't understand why, like, you have to know these breakpoints in your head. Like, why did they jump from 80 to 96? Why couldn't they go to 84, 88, 92, 96? Right? Was it really that much extra work to add in those 4 extra classes so I didn't have to like learn this strange breakpoint in this padding numbers? And the same thing applies to like a lot of different stuff. Like you got to know how the numbers increment for different things. Like for this one, PX 3.5 goes from 3 to 3.5 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, and then like there's no more 0.5s anymore. So you literally have to like memorize these different incrementing numbers, which makes it really annoying and hard in my opinion. By the way, I'm running out of breath because I'm wearing my child, and it was pressing on my chest, and she's like almost 20 pounds, so it's hard to talk and wear her at the same time. But hey, anyway, I'm trying to figure out like what else to give it like a kind of a solid review. Like it has some like nice features like rounded. I can make buttons rounded a little bit, and I could like increase the amount of rounded. I think they have like shadows as well, so I could add box shadows pretty easily. So shadow MD will just add our darker shadow. Again, these docs are great. I think these docs are awesome. So I definitely give it a plus, a thumbs up for having good documentation. But yeah, I'm just scratching the surface of Tailwind CSS. I don't have any other than the complaints I just gave. I think this is a great thing to learn if you're a beginner because okay. So this is one thing I do like about this, right? When you have your styles as close as you can, as coupled as tight as you can to your components, it could be a pro and it could be a con. The pro is if I'm looking at my UI and I say, okay, I see this green banner and I need to style it. Well, all I need to do is find that green banner, and I know 100% all the styles that affect that banner are going to be applied to this section. Now, if you're using styles, you don't know certainly if all the styles are going to be like in a certain class or like a subset of classes or different selectors. It could be really hard to style different parts of your page when you have to like look through a bunch of different style sheets. So the fact that all the classes are just as closely, like the cohesion's really high, so the classes are directly attached to your components, makes it really easy to just look at a component and change the styling or remove some padding or add some padding and not have to like dive into CSS or even scroll up to the top of your page and find a variable that declares your styles. So another thing that I don't really like about it is that there's a lot of code duplication. So for an example, if I wanted to style all these list items to act a certain way, maybe to be bold, like obviously I could say class name, I think it's font bold or text bold. I don't know. Okay, it's font bold. All right, so I applied a bold to this first item. Well, what if we want to apply it to every single list item? Well, I'd have to literally find all these list items and apply it there, right? So there's a ton of duplication. So again, you could just pull this out to a variable, and instead of doing class name hard-coded the font bold, you could have it be like a list item style variable. But again, you have to apply all these class names to all of these list elements just to achieve something really simple. That in CSS, I could literally just say, if you're familiar with CSS, I could say OLLI, and then I could simply say font weight bold. And then every list item inside of this unordered list would become bold, right? It's super quick to apply styles to like your entire page if you know that there's a particular style guide that you're following. The last thing I'll say that I'm not a fan of putting styles directly on components, and this isn't against Tailwind CSS, this is more like inline styles or just having styles defined inside of components, is if you have someone else working on your style sheet, you can't just copy and paste their styles and put them directly in your app. Like if you use Vue or anything, you know that you have like a style tag like this, and then you have some HTML like this or whatever. And I did this in a tutorial video I did with Dennis Ivey where I worked on a Svelte app where basically someone else did all of the layout and the design, and all I did was copy it and paste it into my application. Well, you know, you could just literally copy and paste your styles here, right? I could take some code. It's probably a bad example, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Like I could just go somewhere else. Like let's say all the styles were declared somewhere else like this. I could just open up a style sheet and then go to my component and just paste them in. And then all those styles are going to be applied to that component. With Tailwind, good luck doing that. You literally can't. Like even you can't give a stylist, you can't give a UX designer or a web designer a style sheet and say, hey, make my styles look nice. You can't. You have to give them your actual React code or your source code and say, go through all my HTML files and add classes to make this look nice. And it just really depends on the way that you work in terms of with other designers or other web developers. And I could see that as a huge breaking point, like having to have other people go into your code just to style certain components when maybe they're not familiar with Vue or React or Svelte. Maybe they're not familiar with JSX. They don't know how this stuff works. All they want to do is just style a CSS file and give it to you. And I know there is a way to just configure, like I think you can go to your Tailwind like configuration. So there's like a Tailwind config down here, and you can actually like create your own custom classes that have all these Tailwind styles kind of combined together so that you can kind of do some code reuse. So maybe to kind of mitigate the issue I just talked about, your stylist would have to like add stuff to this. But yeah, I don't really know how that scales. And that's the one thing I'm scared about with using new technologies. Even though this isn't a new technology, it's just this atomic CSS. This has been around for a long, long time. And for some reason, there's a ton of hype over this library. Even though, again, atomic CSS has been around for quite a while. But maybe it's just starting to get picked back up and people are interested in it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is I'm just kind of hesitant with bringing in new libraries that kind of change the way we think about things, mainly because we don't know how this stuff scales. All the stuff you watch on YouTube of people building like sites with Tailwind CSS, I guarantee you they're building like pages that have websites that have like 5 to 10 pages. Let me know how this scales with a React Act that has 200 components in it or 300 components in it, right? It probably doesn't scale. And, you know, people could argue and say it does, and I'll probably get downvotes and say, no, Tailwind CSS is awesome. It scales greatly. But until I've actually used it in a large scale project with a large team of people, I don't know. So it makes me hesitant of actually adopting it because the stuff I work on work, like it's actually a large scale project. We got a lot of developers working on it, and we actually have 300 JSX components, right? So I'm not just exaggerating about handling large scale applications. We have like a separate UX designer who is designs that we have to follow, and then we kind of add them to a style sheet so that they get applied to every page whenever a table changes or the style of buttons need to be changed. And I could see that being a complete nightmare if someone comes along and says, we need all the tables to instead have some border on them. Well, guess what? All of your styles have been hard-coded and applied to your elements individually. And if you wanted to apply that change to, let's say, all your 300 JSX components, this is an exaggeration, but if you did have that many tables in every 300 components, it would probably become a nightmare to refactor. Okay, so right. So again, I'm just kind of giving you my opinions on it. I haven't used it long enough to give you a solid yes, you should start learning this, or no, do not learn it. I haven't built a large scale application using it. So again, I don't know if this scales. I'm just kind of speculating that I don't think it will scale. And you could probably just Google Atomic CSS on Google and ask, does Atomic CSS scale with large scale projects? And you're going to find people probably bickering back and forth about yes, it does, and no, it doesn't. But in my opinion, I don't see how this could scale unless the Tailwind config is going to become like this giant file of 50,000 lines of code. But yeah, if you're new and you've been watching people do stuff in Tailwind CSS and you want to give it a try, I highly recommend it. Again, don't be discouraged because I'm just saying negative things about it. There are a lot of positive things about it, and you can kind of hit the ground running, especially with these great docs. You could simply find, like, I don't know, let's say you forget how to do some padding. Oh, I just did padding. Let's do flex. Boom, off the bat, you could just simply do your flex styles without having to go and do like all this annoying CSS. But is this really that much harder? Flex auto versus typing this? I guess that's up for you to decide. Later all, happy coding.